Designing Components, Section 2. In this section, we will start off by designing form components. We will also start creating a landing page for a web application using the layouts. We will also utilize the tables, tabs, and the progress components. In the end of this section, we will work with the layouts and the grid system. Designing form components. In this video, we will design web pages using the form components that Bootstrap-Vue provides. Let's start by creating a new form component. Now let's import this empty form component in our root component, that is app.vue. Let's remove the default ones. Let's go ahead and check in our browser. As you can see, we are able to see the output of the H1. This means the form component is properly loaded and rendering. Now let's start with utilizing the form components. Let's start by creating a div. I will provide a class form component. I will also add some scoped CSS for that class. Let's start by opening a form. To open a form, we will use form component, that is b-form. B-form have 5 properties. The first one is ID, which receives a string value. You can set it up anything you like. The second property is inline. The default value of inline is false, so you can set it to true, and your form will be displayed in one line. The third property is no validate. Its default value is also false. The last property is validated. Its default value is also false. You can set it to true, so the form will be validated upon submission. Let's start with a simple form. Another form component is b-form-input, which is used mostly for input types. The first property is ID. That receives a string value. Another property is type, where we provide the type of the input. In this case, I will be taking an email address. We can also set another property that is required. Declaring the required property in the form input will make this input mandatory. We can also provide a placeholder just by using the placeholder property. And lastly, I would like to use Vue-model to two-way bind the value of this form input. Now in my script section, return form element for email and initialize it with an empty value. Let's go to our browser and see how this looks. As you can see, we have an input field with a placeholder. I would also like to add some text above and below that will give some hint of this input. For that, I will create a group by using b-form-group. Here I will introduce a new property, that is label. The label receives a string value that will be displayed on top of that input. We can also bind with the ID of the form input by using the label-for property. We can also add a description line below the input form by using the description property. Make sure to close the form group after the input. Now let's go to our browser and see how this looks. Now I would like to create a submit button. For that, I will use b-button with the type submit and a variant of primary. I would also like to create a reset button. Its type will be reset and variant will be danger. Here I will use add submit property in the form opening. Upon submitting this form, it will trigger onSubmit method, and at reset, it will call onReset method. Here in my script section, I will create two of these methods. First, I would like to prevent the default submission of the form, and then use alert and JSON stringify this form. And on reset, here I will reset our form values. As my form have only email, I will reset its value to empty. Let's go to our browser and see how it looks. And on clicking the reset, the input field is reset to the value empty. Another form component is form checkbox. Let's create a group for it first. To use checkbox, I will first have to create a checkbox group by using b-form-checkbox-group. Let's bind this value to form.check. Now I will create the checkboxes by using the b-form-checkbox. The value property receives string. Now let's go to our script and create form.checked form element. Checked will be an array, as we have multiple checkboxes. We will also update our reset method. Now let's go to our browser and see how this looks. Another form component is select. For select group, I will use label food and bind the label to an input. Now let's create the select input. I will bind the value of food in the form elements. Here I will use options. I will also mark this as required. Now in my script section, I will initialize food. And then outside form, I will initialize the array of the foods that will be displayed in the select dropdown. The first option of the dropdown will say select one, and its value will be null. Similarly, I will update our onReset method. Now let's go to our browser and see how this looks. And our validation for required works as well. Another form component is form radio. For form radio, we will use b-form-radio, bind its value to selected, and a value property of a string. Under the script section, we will declare selected. That is it for this video.